one of our nation's foremost historians, lies awake at night worrying about us. Why? Because we don't know history. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet. This is Breakpoint. According to Pew Research, fewer and fewer American adults have a working historical knowledge of the Holocaust. While most of us have a general knowledge about the time period, more than half don't know how many Jews were killed or how Hitler came to power. We'd be foolish to not connect this growing ignorance of history with the rise of anti-Semitism that we see around the world and even in the U.S. right now. In fact, renowned historian David McCullough recently admitted that the connection between our historical forgetfulness and current events keeps him up at night. Specifically, he said, our leaders have forgotten history. They're unaware of the past and uninterested in how they'll be remembered in the future. Now, to be clear, this amnesia we see in our leaders is the fruit of the problem, not the root. The root, as McCullough expressed at the most recent National Book Festival, lies in deeper structural realities, especially the lack of attention given to history in American schools. 80% of our colleges don't require history courses, McCullough lamented, before adding, that's wrong. McCullough's right. It is wrong. And it's dangerous. As philosopher George Santayana famously put it, those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. Or as Mark Twain probably said, history may not repeat itself, but it often rhymes. Unfortunately, we don't seem very committed to remembering the past, as is obvious from how very committed we seem to be to rejecting it, especially anything that smacks of traditional morality. G.K. Chesterton called tradition the democracy of the dead, and he wisely advised, before you remove a fence, you should ask why it's there in the first place. Though our challenges aren't identical to those faced by previous societies, they are similar. In fact, they're essentially variations of the same basic themes. What does it mean to be just? Who is one of us? What do we owe our neighbors? What obligation do we have toward those different from us? What's right and wrong? Who decides? And even if the challenges we face have changed, human nature hasn't. We might believe that we're smarter and better and, as Justice Kennedy liked to say, more morally evolved than our forebears, but that's just prejudice speaking, a version of what C.S. Lewis called chronological snobbery. On the other hand, paying attention to history is a way we acknowledge that our forebears might have learned something about human nature, even if they had to learn the hard way. As I said in a recent commentary on Holocaust Remembrance Day, we're all capable of the evil and the horror on display at places like Auschwitz. A proper knowledge of history and a proper understanding of human fallenness that history gives us is a potent antidote to protect us from our own potential. McCullough offered another important reason for knowing history, one that echoes both Chesterton and Chuck Colson. Knowing history cultivates a sense of gratitude. We're the beneficiaries of those who came before us. As Isaac Newton once said, if I have seen a little further, it's by standing on the shoulders of giants. And he was Isaac Newton. And even beyond the crisis of this moment and the cultivation of gratitude, Christians ought to appreciate history because biblical religion is a historical faith. The scriptures tell the story of God's actions, not in a once-upon-a-time, far, far away realm of imagination or mystery, but within human history. Since the Exodus, God's people have made remembering and reciting God's historical acts a central part of their life and worship. In fact, as many have said, the entire Old Testament can be summarized with the word remember. Of course, Christians believe that same commandment is not only repeated, but it's also fulfilled by Jesus when he said, "Do this in remembrance of me." So history teaches us about ourselves. It helps us avoid personal and cultural blind spots. It reveals the debt we owe to the past and reminds us of things essential to know about God as he's revealed to us in Scripture. What other reason could we need? For Breakpoint, I'm John Stonestreet.